What's going on, everybody? This is James Grandmaster Facts Boys, and you're here for another episode of the Facts Project. Today, special guest all the time, always being here. As a matter of fact, the last time we talked was around July, like late July. And we talked about this comic right here behind me, which was funded on July 25th. And within a few weeks, it was already here. So already this man's business model is already better than his comic game. So, for the fifth time, Anthony Stokes, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, bro. Yeah, it is the fifth time, man. I'm glad. Yeah, got the comic book fast. I see, So that's what we do. That's what we do.
But I digress because to pull it back because of how fast you work and how much you've been able to do in the past year. We now taken into the opportunity to where, and we talked about it before, you're starting to mash up and go into other genres. So this time you decided to go completely left. You left Western style comics and just decided to take your hand into the world of manga with a fantasy tale called I Wish the Gods Were Dead.
Yes.
So all right, for one, I have to ask because you talk about all the time about your inspirations in anime.
Yes, manga specifically.
As far as it pertains to this manga here, what brought this about? Like, this was something that you always wanted to do.
Yeah, so brief story. I love manga. I used to watch the Yu-Gi-Oh TV show. I was grounded, I was often grounded. And my aunt basically brought me home a Yu-Gi-Oh Volume 1, and my mind was blown. I read it, and ever since then, I started this fascination with the medium. And so, essentially, the way that I do things, and the reason why I'm dipping in so many different genres is because when I'm at a con table, when I had Decay and Intrusive Thoughts, even I really can only sell. If you're not a fan of horror, I have nothing for you. So, and a lot of the comments I got, I was doing these black cities. I was doing Baltimore, Norfolk. The question was, do you have anything that's like Dragon Ball Z? And I still don't, but it was a thing of like, okay, I do. If I can make a manga or something like that, I can just appeal to more people, And ideally, I want to go to a show and be able to sell to anybody that has even a passing interest in comics, essentially.
Right. Now, would you say because you've you talked about basically like all these heavily populated black cities that are asking for Dragon Ball Z, the impact on anime and manga in the black community, have you seen it firsthand, or are you just strictly a part of this shit?
No, I mean I was there, bro. Like I grew up on Dragon Ball. Like I like it was Dragon Ball Z. It was Naruto, even, with a little bit after. I mean, during my time, I wasn't a big fan of Naruto. I thought that dub was terrible. But
we like a Toonami guy.
I was a Toonami guy. Yeah, I was a little bit too young. I was kind of in between the Toonami and then like the Netflix Crunchyroll.
Okay.
But absolutely. I think it's because it's a power fantasy, but no, like black kids love DBZ, they love, Naruto, One Piece, all that. So essentially, yeah.
Now, generally, mangas are not as structured as they are with Western style comics. The dialogue is maybe somewhat less because there's a lot more drawn into it as far as the impact of the descriptions of the settings that are basically put out there. And I've noticed, because of, thank you again for the advanced copy, that in this book in particular, you take notice with the adaptation of time jumps and flashbacks that are more than likely like being used. Like you almost start forward, like in the middle of the story, then you start bringing forth like the flashback as to what brought Cheyenne to be who she is, and then we get to present day. So this is another way of structuring how you've been writing. Now, is that something that you say you've learned from mangas in the past about how they structure their origin stories and everything like that, or would it be mainly something that you just wanted to try your hand at?
I think this story, regardless, like this was definitely written to be a manga, and I think you can get away with more. Like there's more use of flashback, I would say, in
Mhm.
manga than Western comics. But I think because there's so much, I don't think it's an insane amount of backstory, but there is stuff that you just can't convey visually. Whenever I can convey something visually, I try to, but it was just too much. So for here, it just made sense. Like drop them, give them a little taste of action, and then get into like the character stuff, and then kind of circle back to the action. That's something I've done before. I feel like that's
Right.
a pretty standard thing.
Right, right. And I even noticed the disclaimer in the summary where you basically said, "Oh, the prologue's in color, but don't worry, the rest of the shit's in black and white."
It's in black and white. Yep.
So you didn't want to just delve away from the fact that this is a traditional manga and that it is going to be in black and white. So don't worry, I'm just doing the color shit just to like bring you here, and then the rest of the storyline is basically brought out in that type of fashion because that's the traditional way of doing it.
Yeah, I remember quite like you would get a Shonen Jump magazine, or you would get a Shonen Jump title in the first, like, yeah, the prologue first couple pages would be in color. You know, it's really expensive. Like the difference in color to black and white is significant. And I kind of wish I just picked the direction, because
Word.
I could have saved some money. But no, yeah, that was definitely a conscious choice. Like I just have such a, I just wanted to create something in that aesthetic, like really bad. And I still want to. I still want to make more manga, and ideally release it by the volume
Right.
going forward.
So you have the title character of a young girl by the name of Cheyenne,
Mm-hmm.
who is experiencing her own Gore the God Butcher type of tale to where, pretty much the world is basically blown up around her. And
Yes.
she's seen it basically take in and suck in the lives of her parents, her little brother Jalen, and
Mm-hmm.
she feels like she's the only one that can basically right this wrong. She's seen that basically the antagonist in the story is, and she even calls it out as such, even in just in her thoughts, because like this motherfucker ain't get enough hugs when he was,
Yeah.
so she calls him out as like a little bit of a bitch that found
Yeah.
this relic in the
Mm-hmm.
middle of the woods and started to create his own army. But
Yes.
yet, even in such, he decided to create these laws
Mm-hmm.
where he was basically uh taking away any forms of technology, or nobody could use anything of electricity. And for one, I'm thinking that this is like one crazy ass Amish person that's just gone zerk, you
That's
know,
hilarious. That would
you
have been
know,
hilarious.
but the use of guns is now gone, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody pretty much brought back to swordplay.
Yes.
Now, in the essence of this world, you now brought us back to the Dark Ages.
Yes,
This is
essentially.
this is now the terms and the settings that this is that post-apocalyptic as it is. You're now pretty much we're going back to medieval times in just the setting alone.
Mm-hmm.
People are turning back into hunter gatherers. They're fighting for food. You know,
Yes.
there's probably, I'm guessing that there's probably different factions out there that are at odds with each other, just basically for the fact that there's probably starvation in process.
Yes.
So like she grew up in an orphanage, and it's like the failsafe of all this is like one day the orphanage got attacked, and the dude, whoever the overlord that ran the orphanage, had a failsafe and was like, it caused like an explosion. Is that what they
So
said?
so essentially the he creates he transforms like animals into like monsters things. And then he
Right.
transformed a human one time, and it's like a giant, and he's so big he's trapped in the gravitational pull of the earth.
Mm,
So he's massive. Yeah. And so it's almost like he says, a sentient atom bomb. So whenever he sees too many people, he's gonna crack on that,
right.
essentially. Like, yeah. So
Yeah, because I noticed that basically after that, if you see more than one a bunch of little ants in one place, you're gonna get stomped out.
exactly. So it's not like he can see, he's from the Earth's gravitational pull. He can't see everything, but like, yeah, if it's millions or if it's thousands of people huddled up, like he knows to stomp that.
Yeah. So essentially, like in the creation of this type of story, fantasy being the way that you built this up, is there essentially and because there's a big cliffhanger in this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is there essentially like a pinpointed goal as to how the antagonist just works into why he's doing what he's doing?
Um, he you kind of said it. He's just greedy, and then he gets shot. So now he's paranoid,
Mm-hmm.
and basically just a miserable person. We might delve into that more, but as of right now, that's where he's at.
Right. And essentially, Jalen, her brother, uh, who she had basically had lost. Like, how much time would you say had passed before they somewhat pseudo become reunited?
I would say 10 to 12 years. Like they were like probably in their early teens, and then now they're like probably in their like early 20s.
Mm. Now, all this time, yeah, we talked about the fact that them being having this much time in separation, Jalen had to grow up as well. It's
Mm-hmm.
more so going into this next issue, how he's grown up.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But even more so when Jalen arrives, also the creatures arrive.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's like there's a little bit of a like a sidetrack with like, okay, if he shows up and the creatures show up at the same time, like it's a spooky ass theory that goes into my mind of how this can get built around.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
I think I love when like character drama
Mm-hmm.
is interfered with by a threat or a plot. Like I think Josh Whedon does this a lot when you think of the Avengers movie. They're sitting there arguing, and then Hawkeye attacks, right? And it's
Yeah.
like it just I love stuff like that because you're 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 putting something, and then in the back of your mind you're like, okay, after the action scene you're thinking like, okay, what are the ramifications of this, like how has this changed? So that's essentially I like that moment a lot, and I think you're picking up a lot of what the next issue is going to be essentially.
Right. And even from a screenwriting perspective, you almost have those instances of euphoria to where like this is like a too good to be true moment. It was like, so if we're talking about like a reuniting phase of two long lost siblings that happen to be towards the end of the book, and then almost at the same time, it's like, nah, this is the first issue.
Yeah. Well, what's going to be interesting in the kind of the essentially, so here's the, because I always have like something that I have a premise, and I try to inject some part of myself that like will get me invested into it, and that's when I become super invested into the story. So this was really my sister moved from Virginia to South Carolina, which was like she we lived in the same city for a couple. She's like a chosen. She's somebody who I've like we become really close like siblings. So she graduated, and for a couple years we lived in the same city for like I don't know, like 2 3 years. Moved apart. We lived in the same city again for a while, and then she moved like 2 states over. So it's really about how you have to let somebody do their own thing and be their own person. Even if you love them, even if you care about them,
Right.
and that's kind of what the inspiration was, like that kind of dynamic. And also there's like a metaphor about late stage capitalism, which is why there's like like an eagle, there's like a bald eagle as well.
Yeah.
um and then as far as the reunite, so essentially she's lost her whole family, so she thinks, so she's able to do like all this reckless shit essentially.
Yeah.
Like, so what is it like now that one of your biggest motivations is gone,
Mm-hmm.
and then now can you act as recklessly, like can you like I thought about it, like, and it depends, but what if Batman's parents came back? Is Bruce Wayne still gonna be Batman?
That's what I was thinking at the end of this was like all this time, the tyranny that he brought amongst these creatures was more so based on the impact of the loss of her little brother. So
Yeah.
now that they've been reunited, does all that shit just disappear?
Yeah, exactly. Like you see her, she's like overwhelmed, like she like collapses,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. No, she does. She literally collapses, and yeah. So that's what it's going to be about. That I always love getting into the philosophy of the characters, and it's almost like I call it a pressure test. It's like you can put a character in a situation, and they can A, change, or B, double down.
Mm,
And how are they going to react? Like if there's a fork in the road, how is she going to react? And that's basically, and like what's their dynamic now?
mm.
Let me see what Jalen's been up to in the second issue.
Yeah, because there's also a small bit of dialogue when she returns, and I forget who she's talking to, but for one, she's asked, "Do you have food?" And she was like, "Well, I ain't got nothing that you would eat." And
Yeah,
and then she basically he asked her about her day, and he was like, "Oh, I was just killing some monsters and everything." He was like, "You got to remember, you're human.
yeah,
You can't be this fucking reckless."
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
if you supposed to be like the chosen one, as they say, and you're doing all this reckless shit, like you could still get tossed into a tree and fucking die. And like
yeah,
chill out.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. So that's what it is like she's basically Liam Neeson from Taken. Like she's just absolute badass.
yeah,
But what's it like now that you have something to live for, essentially?
yeah. Because what is it? Also in the end, if she's talking about she's the only one that can save everyone, but yet she's not even bringing food back for anybody.
Yeah, yeah. She's immature. She's immature.
Big
She's an
time.
interesting character. It's an interesting character. It's going to go in some really interesting places.
Yeah, like it now. When we talk about like basically we talked about the style of writing, of course, with manga, and we talked about your inspirations with anime. It is there a is there a need and a dynamic, and is there an audience, I guess, outside of this that you feel like you want to reach with this book?
Just people that like manga, people that like character driven shonen manga, essentially. Just
Yeah.
it's not, like I said, it's not quite Dragon Ball Z. I'm thinking more like a Berserk vibe. It's not Berserk, or like Attack on Titan. Again, it's not Attack on Titan. It's
Hmm.
not the longest. It's not gonna be a 20-year kind of epic, right? But just capturing that where it's like I want stakes. And my problem with the shonen a lot of times is there's a raising of stakes. Oh, the bad guy can do this, that, this, and
Yeah.
then they move the goalpost so that the hero, like if you think about Dragon Ball Z, where it's like Dragon Ball Z, he turns Super Saiyan because Krillin dies and he defeats Frieza. It's like this is like a once in a 10,000 year thing, and
Yeah.
then you skip 3 arcs later, and literally every Saiyan can go Super Saiyan,
Right.
and then we need Super Saiyan 2, and then okay, we need Super Saiyan, and it's like it's much more. I'll give you even a better example. It's My Hero Academia, and Deku. He. I don't, have you watched My Hero Academia?
Yeah.
Deku has like an encyclopedic knowledge of superheroes and villains, like
True.
and powers and stuff like that. And you're like, oh, this is the story. He doesn't have a quirk. This is a story of him being like a Batman or like a Professor X and overcompensating for not having powers by using his intellect. And they give him the strongest powers in the universe, essentially. No, literally, they give him the strongest power in the
They
universe.
do.
And then it's like, oh, well, if you use the powers too much, your body will get hurt. But like, oh, we have nurses that can heal you off screen, and there won't be any. I mean, from what I watched, there won't be any like long term health ramifications. So it's like you're setting. There's just removes tension. Like when you're like this, there's this, oh, there's no way that you're gonna win, and they win. That's what this is about. Really, is like insurmountable odds, and how does this character defeat? How do you really, what's the mentality of going up against insurmountable odds, and what does that look like what kind of damage does that do to you psychologically? And
Mm,
that, and again, it kind of comes back to that metaphor of late stage capitalism as well, which is also, like I said, a big part of like what the metaphor is essentially.
right. That now, even in the construction of this book, in going with manga, how do you get like an artist that that is that of course we're not familiar with? Everybody's trying to do westernized comics to where they're trying to get the best artists to do the best work. Where when you read manga, it's almost like you're seeing it's a sort of like cartoony, might be chibi art or anything like that. That's given amongst that, and yet like it's still a compelling story because there's a lot more panels delved to the art than there is for the dialogue.
It's an interesting it's really interesting, like the differences. And my friend 24 by 4 kind of broke it down, at least art wise, is that when you look at like western comics, the like the expressions in the mouth, right? Like you think about Batman, Batman's face isn't exposed, but you can see him grimace, like you see him do
Yeah.
all this.
Yep.
And a lot of times you'll see Spider-Man, while his eyes are expressive, you'll see him roll his mask up a lot of times to
Hmm.
talk or communicate. With manga, it's in the eyes. Like the mouth is less important. It's more so, yeah, it's more so about the eyes. So that's a philosophical thing that I keep in mind.
I never saw it like that because I see that a lot in anime.
You do see it a lot. And what I think is cool, and something that you'll see like Pat Chan does, Chris Moses doing this with us, I summoned a demon. She's kind of my type. And something I'd like to do is bridging the gap between manga and western comics. We call it pop style, where it's Common America is also, I think, the best example of this in indie comics, where it's like right in the middle, to where you're almost like a bastardization, where you're doing both. Like you've got a foot in both. So a manga person could pick it up and read it, or a western comic fan could pick it up and read it as well.
Right.
So that's also an avenue that I want to go into, because I love that style. I love the aesthetic. And I love both. I truthfully love both mediums. Like I grew up on manga, but I think both of them have, obviously strength, pros and cons. And but there's some about the manga medium. It just speaks to me, like, obviously.
Yeah. Is it the fact that basically uh there's there's more pages to be given even in a smaller book, whereas like westernized comics are more so traditional 22 to 24 pages?
And I think it's reductive. I think it's a dubious conversation,
Hmm.
because when you're talking about, we say western comics, but essentially what we're talking about is like Marvel and DC, you know
Okay.
that's essentially what we're referring to, because indie comics don't have as much of that. It can be anything. Indie comic can be doing anything, but if we're talking about a 20 page, issue into a trade,
Hmm.
like that, of a superhero, I think that's really what people are referring to. But it's difficult, because Scott Pilgrim, oh my god, I don't know, I forgot about Scott Pilgrim. I think is the definition of that in between manga and
That
comics,
pop
for
art.
instance.
Yeah.
That pop art. Exactly. I don't know how I forgot about that. But
Right.
I was about to say Scott Pilgrim, because Scott Pilgrim has both, right? Like it has a foot in both of those. Um here's a reason why I think I appreciate manga more, and why than big two. I'm a specify big two,
Because people tend to
because
have arguments about this a lot.
they haven't. But I think I said, I think it's dubious, because we could be talking about anything, So that's why I want to specify big two, because like, and even that's kind of, it could be because, like, if I think about, like, what I'm well, okay. So when you take the manga versus comics, right? One, mangas generally have, they have an ending in mind. They have a definitive ending, like a beginning, a start. It's one creator.
Yep.
Usually it's a creator, writer, artist,
Stick
and
together the
sometimes,
entire ride.
well, it's the same person,
Yeah.
or it's a writer combo, artist combo. And they have, it's an auteur thing. They have a character that they can explore. They can do whatever they need to do. Versus DC or Marvel, where it's like you have a property and you are writing for X amount of time, but these stories don't really end, right? Like Spider-Man's not ever going to end. You might have specific runs of Spider-Man that will end, but yeah. And I also think that um the fact that manga is genuinely released by the volume, and that is how a lot of people consume manga.
Hmm.
You have more page. I mean, it's just literally more pages, right? Like you just literally have more, you're able to tell more story
Yeah.
as well. But like I think the thing is though, you you look at the manga and it just feels more deliberate. I think that's what I was going to say, because it's an author. It feels more like we're moving in one singular direction with this, whereas
Right.
superhero comics, it can be, you can
Yeah.
do all kinds of stuff. I was reading Ultimate Spider-Man and they were referencing crossover events. He's like, he met Doctor Strange. He was like, yeah, it was at one time. I was like, I don't even remember this because it wasn't in the comic book.
And that's the thing. Like they'll put the point of reference in like the top hand corner. Oh yeah, they teamed up in this
Yeah,
this book over here because
exactly.
there's no such thing as retconning in manga at all. It's like no, there is no go back to square one.
Yeah, I mean, it starts with volume, and I hate, I do, man, I hate talking to people where you're like, why is it easier to get into manga than comics? And it's just like, because when I want to read Naruto, when I want to watch, first off, anime manga have they have dedicated, there's a dedicated streaming service, two or three of them that are just anime, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So let's say I want to go on a binge and I want to watch every superhero show. I can't do it. Like I can go on Netflix and watch some of them. I can go on like HBO Max or Max and watch some of them.
Yep.
Anime I can just watch on one service, and they have some of them on Netflix and Hulu as well.
Right.
So that's one. It's in one location. I can get the Shonen Jump app and I can just download that bitch and read to my heart's desire, right?
Hmm.
So that's one thing. It's like centralized in yeah, if I'm trying to get Naruto, I read Naruto 1. Like if I'm trying to get into Superman, you ever ask somebody like, "Oh, what's a good run to read? Where should I start with Superman?" They're gonna give you like there could be like a 4-part answer. Like you can like, "Oh,
It's
you can
true.
read All Star Superman and you can read Superman 1 2, And it's just like, and people were like, "Oh, I had this conversation recently. It was so, oh my god, it was so frustrating." I'm trying to remember exactly what happened, but essentially, if an audience member with a passing interest is going to take the path of least resistance,
Hmm.
essentially.
Right.
So maybe, and I also understand, I don't have to read the Spider-Man crossover with Doctor Strange to understand, but it is something missing. Like it can be intimidating, and it's like, oh, people are lazy, but it's like, it's entertainment, bro. I'm not supposed to do homework, right? Like I'm supposed to just pick something up and read it. I was arguing. Oh yeah, no, it was a bang with somebody. They were like, um why is anime so popular and superhero TV shows like less popular?
Right.
Why? And I was like, well, because when I'm adapting a Superman comic book, um, I'm adapting a Superman comic. I have to pick what story. Am I picking this story? Am I picking a combination of stories? Which
Right.
era am I adapting?
Yeah.
Because
That's true.
he's generations old. You
I
know,
agree.
when I'm adapting Naruto, I'm just adapting Naruto. Now you can have like a situation where there's Full Metal Alchemist and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. There's Bleach, and then there's the Bleach that was in the Blood Arc or some
Yeah.
whatever it's called.
Naruto
But
and Baruto, like
but
saying,
that's a no, no, but that's the same series.
yeah, same series.
So that's the same series, right? So like there are examples of that, but it's rare. And then he was like, "Oh well, no, because I forgot the reasoning." But it's like, "Oh well, no, because I'm just like, I was telling him, like, when you're adapting this stuff, it's an extra step, right? It's an
It
extra
is.
like the more questions you have when decisions you have when adapting something, the more likely you are to fuck it up, right?
Yeah.
More and he was like, "Oh well, I just don't see why things like the boys and Invincible are doing really good." And it's like, hey, dumbass, Invincible and the boys are one fucking run. Those are a
That's it.
singular story that they're
Yeah.
adapting.
And also, okay, then that also dives into the talk where everybody that's adapting basically any type of comic book, whether it's from Marvel or DC, feels that they need to bring forth some element of surprise. So if they're adapting a certain run, they flip it. They flip certain
Yeah,
things.
Batman Hush,
Yeah.
Batman Hush, and the Killing Joke as well. They did
Infinity
that.
War. I mean, no, they didn't have the properties of Silver Surfer, but Hulk isn't the one
Yeah,
who crashes through the Sanctum Sanctorum. Norrin Rad flies through the damn Sanctum Sanctorum and basically tells them that Thanos is coming. So it's
yeah,
like certain characters are flipped here and there. Their stories
exactly.
like, hold up, that's not how that scene goes. To where if you're starting from episode 1, or if you're starting from issue 1, volume 1, page 1,
Mm-hmm.
like it's okay. Like you want to see it live on screen, and so what, you can follow it all the way through. Like when I was watching Invincible, I knew what was going to happen in the first episode.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
when people were like caught off guard, I was like, oh shit. Like it was like, look, if you literally read the first 40 pages of Invincible, you will get this episode right here.
Yeah. Exactly, exactly. I was just like, bro, why do you think Invincible and the boys are the ones that are doing really good? Tell me, like, why do you think that? Oh, I don't know. He didn't even answer. I'm like, bro, okay. There's like, it's like this lack of practicality, and I don't want to. I'm not. I say it's not the gatekeep, but just to point something out. It's like if you're a creator, you're thinking about this more, but if you're a consumer, it's more like, why can't everybody just enjoy everything like I do? You know, which is philosophically I understand, but it's just not. It's
Yeah.
just not that is clearly not bearing out, right? Like that's not the case. Like we can just see that the manga sales are skyrocketing, and then people say the comic book sales are not matching it. And it's just I get it. And also it's like people are like, oh, you can just pick up a comic book and read it. And this is an argument I hear a lot, but it's always from people that read a lot of comics. I've never heard a super casual comic book reader make this argument. But it's like, yes, you picked up a comic book, 15, 25 years ago, and now you are enthralled with the medium, and you can just pick up a run and just read it, which is lit. That's cool. But think about what I said. I got Yu-Gi-Oh! Volume 1 and read it. There was no barrier of information. It
Yeah.
started at 1. If she gave me Yu-Gi-Oh! Volume 5, would I have been as enthralled? I don't know. So it's always people that are bringing in this baggage. We're talking about casual, casual, casual. You know what I'm saying? We're talking about somebody who's never read a comic, never read manga.
Right.
They don't have the same propensity. They don't have the same patience that you do for the medium. So it's like I said, it's a dubious conversation. I'm not sure there's like I don't think there's a definitive answer, but I think the most obvious answer for why manga is more popular is because it's a lower barrier of entry. Therefore, people are gonna hop in. It's not that crazy.
Yeah, and you basically see that by the implementation of how it's been constructive now in popular culture. Back when basic Comic Cons were what used to be like damn near Star Trek Comic Cons back in the 80s, when they turned into basic Comic Cons that were strictly just comic books, that has now been like basically overtaken by the anime crowd, whole-handed. Like you almost go to a Comic Con nowadays. If you go to a major metropolitan city and go to New York Comic Con, it's more than likely you're going to get outshined 60% to 40%. There's way more anime cosplays, and if you look around, they're taking up the space.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, because yeah, absolutely. And you think about it, it's a relatively in terms of shonen, right? Like, what's the earliest shonen anime? Like Dragon Ball, which I still wouldn't even say Dragon Ball,
Mm,
but like those at the 80s. So you're talking about it had like
yeah,
Western comics had a 40 superhero comics had like what like a
like a
40-year head
50
start.
year head start.
Exactly. So I mean, it just and there's always going to be new stuff, right? There's always going to be new stuff. There's going to be Chainsaw Man's popping. That's going to come out. I think Dante Don is on its way. It's always going to be something new that comes in, but we just can't deny the facts. And that's the only thing, because we have to, like, when me as a creator, when I'm looking at someone, I'm asking the question, like a hard question. I'm trying to get to the bottom of it so we can reverse engineer whatever's happening, right? Like whatever is going on, we need to reverse engineer it so we can understand it. And it's like it's a lot of times it's like when you're like, oh, everything's popular, it's like, but you're just in the way, you're not helping the conversation, you're not helping us understand the mediums
It's true.
better, you're just there, you're just taking up space.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it was Into the Spider-Verse came out, or Cross the Spider-Verse and came out, which I thought was a pretty good movie, and the director was like, hey, we don't have to compare this to other things, but that's the conversation. That's what makes things fun. Like, I think Spider-Man 2 is the best Spider-Man movie. Some people think Into the Spider-Verse is the best Spider-Man movie. Some people
Right.
think across it. And that's the fun because we can pick and choose and what this does better than that, what that, this is what the other thing does better. And through that, we can have a better understanding of the medium of film. We can have a better understanding of like the
Of course.
characters and canon, all this stuff. But if you were to sit in the middle of that conversation and be like, everything's valid, you're stopping people from learning more about media literacy,
Yeah,
essentially.
and more so in that case, like if we're talking about 30 years ago, like if you none of this shit wasn't at its at any type of height.
Yeah.
The anime that I watched, Jim Row, the Wolf Brigade, and fucking Fist of the North Star and everything like that.
Yeah.
Like that's literally that was the back of the Suncoast video, $25 a pop for one volume that you got to watch and bring back home. It was a rarity to get those things.
Yep.
And even in the height of comic books, it was like nobody was talking about them shits in high school 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So something had to happen. Guess what? All your cartoons got shelved, and then they inputted fucking anime in front of your little cousins' faces. Guess what took over? The same way that you are about G.I. Joe and Transformers and Thundercats. These
Mm-hmm.
little motherfuckers right here are all watching DBZ. They're watching Toonami. They love Bleach. They this is their thing.
Yeah, and I was in high school. I was in high school like 10 like what? Oh my god. Like 12, 13, 14 years ago. I
you
think
about to, you about to show your age. Go ahead.
yeah, I know it. Like but that was when I feel like I was in that kind of that boom, And I think it's gotten more popular, but I think
It
it was
has.
yeah. Toonami. I think it was essentially Toonami because and also um it was Toonami, and I remember very vividly. And this is probably kind of against my argument, but no, I remember I was talking about. I was talking. You brought up Infinity War because this is also like a slight pivot, but kind of the inverse. Kind of hurts my argument in that when I think Infinity War is an amazing movie, right?
Absolutely.
I think it's like a top 10 movie of all time.
Of course.
I think it's amazing. Not a super comic movie. I think it's a top 10 movie of all time. I think it's amazing. And my argument is that no movie has had more resources, but it maxed out every resource, right? Like every performance was good, every line of dialogue was good, the had a
Mhm.
great villain, etc. And somebody was saying like, oh, well, it's the inverse of my argument that you can't watch it on its own to enjoy it. And it's like, I mean, I don't know, I can't watch Return of the King on its own. Like, does that make it a lesser? It just does, yeah, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And my argument was like, my argument was that I would watch an episode of it was an episode of Ghost in the Shell, I believe,
Mhm.
when you would catch someone Toonami and you just be enthralled. You're like, for the rest of your life, you'd be like, man, you watch an episode and you'd be like, it's like in that somber anime music would pop up and you're like, yo, what did I miss? Like, what am I gonna miss? Because there was no
Yeah.
it was I mean, Blockbuster, it was like, yeah, it was around, but like I don't think it had it like that. Like, and yeah, you would just become enthralled with it, and you would think about that for like the rest of your time. Or the inverse is like I used to watch Dot Hack, and Dot Hack, it was like you had to stay up in America, you had to stay up till 1:30 a.m. to watch Dot, and I would miss episodes all the time. Like there was no, if I'm staying with my grandparents, they're not gonna let me stay up till 1:30 a.m.
Right. Right. Right.
So it's just crazy. Like I really think Toonami was like a big factor. And once it was like, once it became, you can stay in on a Saturday night and watch anime. Like I think that's what it was. Like because it was Zatch
Oh
Bell,
yeah,
One
because
Piece,
Toonami was
Naruto.
on super late. I mean, it wasn't until well, shit. One, the internet.
Yep.
Two, streaming services. Streaming services and the internet made anime reachable because
Yeah.
basic TV pushed it back to those weird ass fucking hours. So like the allowance of Crunchyroll
Yeah.
when it was out, and of course when Netflix came out, because they started to put a lot of anime on their service in the
Yep.
beginning,
Yep.
it was like I have access now.
Mm-hmm.
And it was more so even like the beginning of a little bit of a boom for Netflix, because Netflix in the beginning of the streaming era was like minuscule. And they started just, aside from their original programming that they put up in there, they put a lot of anime in there in the beginning.
Yeah, I remember watching Brotherhood like that. Yeah, I think I remember watching Toonami. My dad wanted to watch sports. So I was like, I want to watch Toonami. I would go to there was a gym, there was an apartment gym that I would go to and just watch it in there. And just I'll be on the treadmill just bullshitting. But I was watching not Naruto. I always hated it. I couldn't do Naruto. But One Piece was my shit. Zatch Bell was my shit. You
Mhm.
know, so yeah, man. I think I agree with you. I think it was Toonami at the beginning once because I remember specifically it was middle school Saturday night they would have anime. And I think you're right. Like once after that, once Netflix came out, once Crunchyroll came out, it was over. You know.
Yeah. Like now, what I had to like wait for a specific time to watch, I can watch whenever I want.
Yeah, absolutely. You can binge it. Like you think, and then also this is a point that Russ made about he was talking about Game of Thrones. He was talking about like a catalog, and he was talking about it's really interesting. The Russ Joe Budden interview. Joe Budden tried to fuck up the interview. He's so incompetent, but Russ is a really good interview, so he saved it. He
Mm,
was saying that like what he did was he had like 10 out. I think he had 10 albums in like 2 years.
mm.
And he said that he noticed that on SoundCloud, the first song would pop and then the second it would kind of trail off. So he's like, okay, he took like like months off and just he was going to release a song every week, like a single song album every week for 52 weeks.
Oh, like EPs, almost like one, two
One
songs,
song.
one song.
No,
Same.
one song. Yes, one song because again, they'll listen to the first one, but they don't care about that.
The
So
algorithm would probably like
yeah,
it would
so it
fight it.
starts growing. It starts growing, and like it was a steady growth. And he was talking about like now, right? But I'm doing these songs, but now I have this entire back catalog. So if you find an artist, right, and you like their single, and they don't really have much. Maybe they have an album. Maybe you know it's hard to really sink your teeth into like them as an artist, right? Now, if you do the same thing and then they have four albums, you can lose your fucking mind. You know, like that's the benefit. That's the cool thing about discovering a new artist is like, oh my god, I get to go through their entire discography and just watch and just pick up all these songs, pick what I like, pick what I don't like. I recently got into a Gorillaz kick,
Mm.
and because it was around, and I was like, oh my god, I have like 6 albums that I can really like delve into, and it's like when you discover something and then you have all that material, all that content, you just go crazy. Like
True,
you know, you just go fucking insane because
true.
you can get lost in this for hours. And guess what? There's another anime and another. You'll never watch every episode of anime in your life. You couldn't possibly do it.
Nah, you couldn't do it. You'll die.
You'll no, but you literally, yeah, exactly. So now it's like, oh my god, I have an entire streaming service just for anime. It's up. It's over with.
Yeah, it's like when cats be like, "Oh man, It's like, what you doing tonight?" Well, and nah, I ain't hanging out. I'm on like episode 726 of One Piece. We're like, all right, come on, bro. It's
Nice
like,
knowing you.
yeah, it's like, all right, man. I'll see you in a month. It's like,
Yeah, hell no.
maybe, you know. But look, man, interesting conversation. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
appreciate you doing this with me, man. Now, no, you did a short campaign for this, so this is 2 days left.
Yeah, I started a day early, and I have a con
You
on
did, and I
Saturday and
caught
Sunday.
that. Damn it, you ain't announced that shit.
You know I was like, oh, now I like damn, I like the con. It's going to end during the con, like before the con even starts. I was like, man, I should have thought. You know what it was? I can't even get. But basically, I was nervous about something else. I was like, I need a distraction, so I just launched it a day early.
Ah, damn it.
Kind of screw myself because you know it's I where I want to end up, I want to have something on the platform at all times, you know. Um and you know, you want to mess with stuff and see how does it go because yeah, how does it work with certain things and try different things. So I try something different.
All right. Hey, well, I wish the guys were dead is live on Kickstarter with a couple days left. Anthony, appreciate you being here again.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I did one interview for this entire campaign. So
Damn.
I can't. Yeah. Yeah. I'm
All
tired.
right, look, all right. Then I'm ecstatic. I'm happy I'm here. Shit. All right, so I'm gonna get this out as soon as possible
Thank you.
because this, of course, this manga is currently out right now. Get your pre-sales in because I know I'm gonna probably get this book in like 2 weeks. Word, because his fulfillment is strong. His fulfillment game is strong. All right.
Yeah.
So for everybody out there, James Grandmaster Facts Boys, Anthony Stokes, I wish the guys were dead. Still live on Kickstarter. Get that right now. We are out.